everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick this off, I do want to point out to the audience that we welcome questions. So during today's fireside chat, if questions arise, post them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and I will get to those at the conclusion. So I'd now like to turn this over to Steven Saltzstein, Forrest Family Office's CEO.
Great. Thank you, Callie, and thank you everyone for joining. So we're reporting to you today from AWS reInvent. Yes, I would love to. I want to talk about AWS reInvent because it's so pertinent these days and so exciting. But why don't you all just take a minute, if you wouldn't mind, and everyone just introduce yourselves, if that's okay.
Sure. I'll go first. Hello from AWS reInvent. It invades Las Vegas every year about this time. It's 60,000 people, and so it's it's all the stuff that's going on AWS wise and AI and things like that. It's quite thrilling. And I'm here with Brett Cocking, former senior sales executive of Microsoft and AWS. And we've had some great meetings. And with that, I know we'll come back to that, but and then I'll pass it over to my colleague back east, Raphael.
Brett, Raphael, talk to us from location.
Sure. I'm actually back on the East Coast, enjoying the nice chilly weather here, and work in business strategy and finance for Pace, and been here since the early days, and really excited about what's going on with our AWS relationship build out and relationship that's really developing with some major strategic customers.
Awesome. Brett, I would love to educate our family offices as someone who, has worked for the top enterprise companies in this space. Is there a little bit of a different feel at AWS reInvent this year than years past?
Yeah, this is
what that is.
And I started coming here when I was running global IoT sales for AWS. I started that team, and it wasn't small in 2016, but it's certainly gotten bigger. Probably peaked last year. It's a little bit down this year, maybe by a few thousand people. But as Tom alluded to, I think there's still over 65,000 people here. It's all the senior leadership from AWS, obviously, a lot of the account teams, many of which we met with here. And then a lot of the top customers and partners. If you walk through the expo hall, there's not an IT company not represented at reInvent right now. It's amazing.
And obviously with AI, the whole space has leveled up. But IoT, there's going to be a trillion IoT, receivers out there, which is, it's unbelievable. So can you talk about that and what's happening at the conference?
Sure. Yeah. When I started leading the IoT sales team at AWS, about 3% of the actual data coming off the device is actually doing something meaningful, meaning 97% of it was just going into storage. Gen AI and specifically agentic Gen AI has changed all of that. Basically, any information coming off or going back into a device is actually the benefit of it. The true ROI is coming out from a Gen AI platform. And so everything that we talked about, 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago around getting value from IoT, it's now being recognized through Gen AI and machine learning. And, that's really what Pace has really excelled at as well, is actually using that telemetry data to not only do predictive analytics against the systems that it's monitoring, but actually optimize them. And that's really the leading kind of, I look at the maturation or innovation curve around what Pace is doing. The thing that differentiates itself is the fact that it's using AI and machine learning to actually optimize the systems it's managing.
So, Tom, what's your goal? What are you guys trying to do at the conference?
Yeah, well, Brett's, with Brett's long history and knows an awful lot of people. It's been a great series of meetings. We just finished a lunch with someone involved in resiliency and at AWS resiliency, also ethical and security issues for around AI. It was a really interesting meeting, and then at the same lunch, there was kind of the representative for a major airline. AWS had an awful lot of work with the airlines, and the airlines all have sustainability goals. They all have cost goals, They all remember COVID, where, things went down, and they're trying to rebuild for the future. And so there's a lot we can do, just loss control, carbon mitigation, better fault detection, those kinds of things. That's why AWS is a really great partner. Other meetings, have, education, ag tech, agricultural applications for, making that pump, that motor, that sort of thing run better, run smarter. And it's always inspiring, frankly, to go to these sessions and see what other companies are doing, in agentic AI, agents talking to agents. And as one of our, conversations had yesterday, what they said is capabilities we have now, we didn't have a year ago. So it's really moving fast. So it's
like what? Well, talk to me about capabilities. Like what, give me some examples.
Sure. It's what you can have. And, it was really an interesting statistic that 3% of all that data, got used somehow a few years ago, and 97% nothing, just went into storage. What you can do now is, you can have a weather agent looking at the weather. You've got a whole bunch of construction equipment. It's colder. The unit may be throwing some sort of trouble signal or something like that, which you didn't have before either, right? But now you have the trouble signal, but now it's colder. The crankcase oil's colder. That engine's going to have to warm up a little bit more, right? Things like that. Just better discovery of things being on when they don't. A lot of what we're doing is in smart grid and power grid. We've got this enormous tsunami of demand coming on the power grid, and what we can do is help everything else, make room. Happening in AI, and so those are the things that are really it's Amazon's and AWS's best interest to control that, right? Because they're in cloud and so forth, but also they've got such a big network of companies, and government, commercial, you name it, military, name it, where we can do all these things. So,
I mean,
yeah. So
I'd like to weigh in. I think the Gen AI
please.
is a big changer. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I said please
in
weigh
years
in.
past, it was really, it was. I mean, back in the day, it was really great if you could monitor a system and say, hey, it's up or it's down. And then once the predictive piece started, well, that was interesting because you get ahead of maintenance issues. Optimization stuff is interesting. Genetics changed all that. Now, if a system's sensing that there's an anomaly or there's something that needs to be done on it, it's not only saying, hey, there's an issue. We think this is what the issue is, and it'll actually schedule a maintenance person to go out and open a service ticket to address that issue. And then even actually help order the part and say, based on what we're seeing, the anomaly or the code's coming up, order this part and schedule that part to be installed. All that agentic piece of it, that whole workflow is really transformational in the industrial space.
Right. And Tom, does that capability like lead into everything that you're doing, your patent portfolio, all of that? It seems like, you guys are in the sweet spot on that.
Right. Yeah. And that's why we've had the support from U.S. Department of Energy, which, is really very involved in the evolution of the power grid that we all, use, electricity. Can't have the internet without electricity. We're facing all this demand, so we have to match supply and demand. And that's really the biggest thing that we're excited about. And when you're also optimizing the demand, the load, you're reducing the carbon. So what we've got is we've got a patent portfolio, which is great. We've got the OEM relationship. That's kind of like, well, if big global OEM says they want a private label, that's pretty good proof. And then we've also got, billions of training data points from which we can build better and better things to build more energy efficient heating and cooling equipment, to run this stuff you have better, to really make whole communities sort of into batteries, virtual batteries, and all those things we kind of need right now. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting time.
Look, what is it? 61% of all power consumption is around, I'll just call it HVAC, right? It's heating and cooling.
Yeah.
And so that is like exactly where you guys can help. I know you just touched on it a little, but give me a concrete answer in regards to what does the company really do?
Sure, sure, absolutely. And what we do is basically, in this, I'll hold up my iPhone, right? It's right here. So it's providing the connectivity. It's you know how big it is, right? It's the same as a smartphone. What we do is bring the ability to make more efficient, to optimize the operation of heating and cooling wherever it is. You just put this edge node in. It's pretty easy. It's almost like wiring in a thermostat and a lot of people have done that into this HVAC equipment. And when the call comes for heating and cooling, we deliver a more energy efficient response. So if you've got a smart thermostat, good for you. We work well with that. We've saved 28% over a Nest thermostat. We have some work in that. If you've got a building control system, great. We'll deliver that. So we're complementary and additive to what you've got. Or if you don't have anything, we can give you those savings too. And what, the thing we've got is sort of a triple win. Your utility, electric or gas utility, will pay for the project because they already charged for energy efficiency programs in every kilowatt hour that we buy. Look on your electric bill, it's there. Every gas therm that we buy, look on your electric or your gas bill, it's there. And then the third thing, we have is that we have a financial guarantee. We have this deterministic AI and machine learning cloud-based that, large insurance company, Munich Re, has seen, okay, we can guarantee that you're going to get the dollar savings one way or the other. So it's kind of a triple win, and your utility will pay for it. So, yeah.
Hey, Brett, I mean, one thing I'm wondering in the back of my mind is, is AWS worried that they're going to end up looking like the bad guy here as utility bills go up, around the country? And I'm just curious, like your thoughts there and where Pace would fit in.
Yeah, it's top of mind, I think, for all the cloud providers, AWS included in that. I will say this, I think AWS, granted, I'm still wearing, even though I'm not there, I still wear AWS on my sleeve a little bit. They've got a complete leadership team that is dedicated to sustainability around the world across all their facilities. And they spend a lot of time, investing in technology and IoT devices across their fulfillment centers, their data centers. And there's a dedicated leadership team that reports all the way up through to Andy. Every month they report on, hey, how are we doing against our goals? And they're actually comparing one facility in a similar geography in with other facilities and trying to use a bunch of sensors to figure out why one facility is using more energy than water than another. And so, yeah, I think it's on the mind of all the cloud providers right now. Having worked for both AWS and Microsoft, I think AWS is doing a little better job, in my opinion, using IoT and technology to help isolate anomalies and get ahead of that.
It's interesting. Tom, you're already producing something like 30 billion training data points right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, you read about AI and AI data is power, right? And the training data is the stuff that you use to teach the models, grow the models, models on models. That's learning about learning. What we have, and the good thing is about us, we don't have to in our world of AI and machine learning. It's all energy data, it's temperatures, it's things like that. You don't have it's not all labeled. So that's one. A lot of people know that the thing with LLMs and so forth is you have to label the data. It came from this. You're scraping, vast amounts of written material. You're scraping YouTube videos, all that stuff. Don't have to do that in our sector, right? It's easier. And that's, but 30 billion plus training data points, hundreds of thousands more every month into our database. And that's what we can use to build better stuff, more energy efficient stuff that is going to run more efficient, to add efficiency to the stuff you have. Because if you've got a heat pump or an air conditioning unit, you don't necessarily want to replace it. It's not very sustainable anyway to rip it out and put a new one in. So just make it work better.
Talk to me about how you guys do that. You speak a lot, or one analogy I think of in the back of my mind is there's a tremendous amount of power lost when a car stops at a red light, right? Or
Right.
stops at a stop. It stops, it starts. It stops, it starts. You guys kind of produce this gradual curve without any full stopping, and therefore save a tremendous amount of energy. I mean, is that the secret sauce?
Yeah, and in fact, Hitachi, one of our strategic partners, referred, it's good. He makes the analogy to efficient driving, right? You just as you say, you go to the stoplight. It doesn't matter what kind of car you have. You go to the stoplight, you stop, lose all that momentum. Light turns to green, you go on, you stop, and so forth. But if you sort of play that game, some people play, and your cars actually help you do this now. They got the red and the green indicators, the mile per gallon indicators on the dash will help you if you want to pay attention, do it better. So instead of doing that, you just come off the gas or come off the accelerator, coast. And then if you play the second part of the game where as you get to that stoplight, it turns from red to green, bingo, you win. And some people can get 50 miles per gallon with a regular internal combustion engine. We asked, did you change the way the internal combustion engine worked? No, you changed the way you drove the car. And that's what we do.
Right. Yeah, that's what you do for all these for basically everything in the heating and cooling ecosystem. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah, that's right.
Refrigeration,
What
yeah.
what the big
Refrigeration too.
property managers like is this is something that they can put on. They've got performance indicators to help their clients, their big commercial clients. It might be a big bank chain, it might be retail or office or that sort of thing. They've got locations all over the country. We work with CBRE, Jones Lang LaSalle, Sodexo. What they like is this is something that's pretty easy to do. The regular HVAC technician can put it in. It's just pretty much like wiring a thermostat into your HVAC contractor, in your HVAC unit. It connects to the cloud via cell, and you don't have to worry about the firewall and all that stuff. And the savings are immediate. So, and they are documented, which is why the utilities will pay, 50 to 100% of the project because you are demonstrating the savings you got over the baseline because you're able to show the baseline change.
Can you talk in terms of family offices? Meaning, for instance, I know you guys are working with the largest college and university housing real estate firm, but if you're like a large, so I'm just curious on a percent basis what you could save them, and then I don't know, like how big is this market? What's the TAM here?
Yeah, it's really big, and we got some stats in our deck, deck, which I think all the folks on the call are free. We're happy to review it, but the market is enormous. There's 75 million commercial heating and cooling units in the United States alone. They're about the same number, funny thing, as residential, and so for all of those, you can save 20% on that portion of your energy bill. You mentioned the 61% that's heating and cooling on a commercial good. 20% of that 61% is for let's say, a big retail company. That's a lot. That's really a lot. If you're in
Yeah,
the market, they're on 2 to 3% margins, that's an awful lot of canned goods to sell, right? And so that's why that's a natural market for the multifamily and so forth. We've done some really great results where you're getting that 20% on your HVAC. You're paying $100 before, now you're paying 80, and it's guaranteed a month per unit. And you're also getting revenues in the new world of smart grid. You can get paid to curtail your load at given times of the day. And with our technology, nobody gets hot or cold. That's a big deal. And that's what we've been demonstrating at DOE Lawrence Berkeley. Yes, it's the comfort. There's no comfort penalty. So you get the KW reduction, which the grid needs, but you don't get hot or cold.
right. And so can you talk about that? There are certain situations where through equipment financing, et cetera, people will get paid for this.
Yeah. Raphael, do you want to talk about that? The equipment.
Sure. There are yes, you can, and it's just really interesting because a couple of our really impressive technologies and applications are one is something called demand response, and this is as big a problem as the cost of energy is the overwhelming demand growth, which the utility operators, which the transmission organizations that handle different regions of the country already are overwhelmed with demand, which is why we get brownouts and blackouts and all kinds of power quality problems. So they will pay very often, many times the rate, even thousands of dollars per unit, depending on the size of the unit, to reduce your demand at peak hours. And 80% of peak electric demand is driven by heating and cooling needs. So it's driven by the weather. And there right now is no way until we came along to actually reduce the demand significantly without making people really uncomfortable, basically hot or cold, which they don't like. And we can take down the demand. We've proven 60% demand reduction without impacting temperature. And that's combining with we call pre-cooling, where you do some cooling when the rates are cheap and demand is low. You cool it a little extra and you coast on the way back up using our what we call throttle back technology.
Yeah, and
There's
just
also time of day pricing, which is becoming a big deal too. And that is just we have the ability now also to adjust the HVAC loads per time of day, depending on what the resident wants.
Right.
And just as a data point on how much you get paid to free up a kilowatt, it will vary by state. It will because and by region, NERC region. But let's say in some parts of New York, downstate New York, in the summertime, you can get paid over $1,500 per kilowatt if you can aggregate 150 kilowatts. And we would mention that 1.5 kilowatts is a hairdryer. Okay, so this is real money. Steady state, hundreds of dollars per kilowatt in California, Texas, Florida, all these places where demand is really zooming up. And where's the supply going to come from?
So is it possible that you would, combine all of your deployed systems in order to make that money?
That's the whole point. That's why we work with one of the largest demand response aggregators. It's a company called CPower. It's part of Energy,
Gotcha.
large
Right.
energy.
And it doesn't.
And they're all about putting it all together and delivering those so-called negawatts.
Right.
Negative.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's literally an incremental service module that we just add on. There's no extra hardware, anything like that involved. So the
It's like you
incremental
guys are
costs
creating an
less than
energy
zero.
swarm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an extra service you would get, and no extra cost to install anything or that hard. So and then we get a share of the savings as well.
Right.
I know you guys have some demos going on with your Gen 5 product, where it's like with the California the California Energy Commission and the U.S. Department of Energy. Can you talk about those? What are we trying
Sure.
to?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we've been very pleased and proud really to work. DOE has been a terrific supporter, and grant funding and so forth. And we just completed some demonstrations at DOE Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, which is, it was an Oppenheimer. That's, where Ernie.
Oh, really? That's funny. I didn't know
Lawrence,
that.
Ernie Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we saw his desk, so but at the same time, Jennifer Doudna, who was, the Nobel Prize for CRISPR, is also has her offices there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really cool place to visit. It's really.
Yeah.
But they also have probably the premier smart grid test facility in the world. And what we've done is show that against what Raphael's saying, what we're all going to be seeing is hourly price differences for electricity every hour, because that's the only way to match supply and demand, right?
Right.
Well, how else are you going to do it? And what we can do is throttle back, air conditioning while keeping people warm or cool in response to those price signals. And also things like, and this goes back to the agentic AI, things like weather, things like, what was the weather over the last 7 days to next day's forecast, that kind of thing. It all goes together. And by the way, we'll also give you fault detection too. So we've demonstrated all of those things under a California Energy Commission funded grant just over the last 18 months. And, monitoring things like, a Tesla Powerwall, microgrid stuff, monitoring for vibration monitoring. So in one little package, you can get a lot of value, and you can put it on anything.
So your CTO came from Carrier, right?
That's right. Yeah. 23 years Carrier and two textbook authors and so forth. And, it Carrier's it's a great American story, great Willis Carrier and so forth. But you know what? The stuff they make in 2025 looks a lot like the stuff they made in 2012.
Right.
So you can add, and you can add efficiency to even a new unit. And we've demonstrated that, or you can make an
That's interesting.
the old unit in place and make it more efficient too.
I mean, is that why this solution didn't come from a big OEM?
Well, you're asking the wrong person that, because I'm going to enthusiastically launch into how innovation happens, and you don't want that. We only got.
Kind of interested, but okay.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, what you always say is, where'd Nest come from? The Nest thermostat, right? Did it come from Carrier, Trane, Lennox, York, JCI, Johnson Controls, and so forth? No, it came from two guys who were on the iPod development team at Apple, right?
Right.
Steve Bell, Phil Schiller. And, the story goes, Tony was designing, with his iPod money, Tony was designing his eco-friendly house in Tahoe. And he goes to the hardware store and he comes back and tells his wife, all those thermostats suck. So, and they do, because it's stupid little screen and so forth. They don't learn anything. And so that was the idea for the Nest thermostat, right? Let's put an occupancy sensor on. Let's try to figure out if you're in the room. If you're not in the room, maybe we don't care what the temperature is, right? If we can establish a pattern, we'll know when you're not in the room. If we don't have a pattern, yeah, then it has to catch up when you get back in. It's a great idea, right? Did it come from all the major OEMs? Nope. Came from two guys on the iPod development team, and then at 3.2 billion, they got traction, they knew how to market, and 3.2 billion acquisition by Google. So
you guys are next.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're a lot
Well,
better,
I mean,
too.
I will say you do have one giant endorsement, which is Munich Re. I mean, how did Munich Re found you guys, right?
Yeah. They were looking for, I mean, you can imagine, if you're a big insurance company, right? What do you care about these days? Well, you care about extreme weather. You care about, the increasing frequency of storms and big events, unusual weather becoming usual, but you also care about all the stuff you insure, right? And Munich Re, insures a lot of commercial buildings and industrial facilities in the United States.
Right.
A lot. And what they cared about is, when they came to us, they were looking for something. They said, what you do, this little, easy edge node that you can put on any kind of equipment, they said that's what we're looking for in what they call IoT for active risk management. So the good news is, if it's kind of like if you remember that IBM Watson commercial from a few years ago, where the elevator technician shows up in the lobby, just before he shows up in the lobby, and the concierge says, "Hi, why are you here?" And he said, "Well, the elevator is going to fail in 3 days." And
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. So
Right.
good news is they've got the client, the account holder of Munich Re gets predictive maintenance, fault detection, that sort of thing. And frankly, what Munich Re gets is claims management. Yes,
Right.
a claim comes in, my compressor broke, on my construction site, and they say, yeah, looks like you redlined it for 7 hours before that, so it's kind of both ways.
That's funny. Hey, we have a lot of audience questions, so I want to get to them. So, Callie, floor is yours.
Okay, great. So let's go in here. Okay. So what types of buildings or industries see the strongest ROI from installing Pace AI?
Sure. Raphael, do you want to try for that? Or anything?
Sure. It's a question of who's using the most energy, and it's expensive, and they use a lot. So, for example, retail. So, the vast majority of the buildings in the world and in the country are, are low-rise buildings. So, when you fly over the city and you see all the retail establishments and warehouses, and you see all those gray and brown boxes on the roof, they can save a ton. And the issue for them is that they are typically not a very high margin business, and they got to heat and cool that space all the time. Even if it's not always that hot, they got to manage the humidity. And so they burn a lot of natural gas and a lot of electricity or oil to keep those buildings at temperature. So that is, what is it, like 70% of the buildings are 3 stories and less, or 80% of the buildings? That is the biggest part of it.
97% of the buildings in the US are less than 100,000 square feet, which usually translates to 2 or 3 or 4 stories.
Right. And just to comment on the market size that you mentioned. So you get an idea of the market size. State of New Jersey has just allocated $3.75 billion for utility energy efficiency rebates over the next 28 months.
3.8 billion.
Yeah,
Energy
for buildings, and that is just the state of New Jersey.
Or Jersey, for New Jersey, yeah, alone. And so I think the question was what kinds of buildings? So Raphael mentioned retail, commercial office, we've done a lot of, again, a lot of it's low rise. The distribution facilities, multifamily, where we have this relationship with an energy service partner that really focuses on student housing. These are apartments, if you've got an apartment that has a sort of that wind unit under the window. I lived in New York for 10 years, with the radiators and so forth. That's a little bit different. You'll have a boiler and a chiller, but if you're in an apartment, if you own apartments where typically each apartment might have a heat pump or split air conditioning, that's a really good fit, and that's what we're doing with this large owner.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Most
school buildings, industrial buildings, most schools,
yeah. We can do something for pretty much everything, but we're not a panacea. If you got a chiller in a skyscraper the size of a house, then that's not what we do. If you got but a lot of other things we can do something, and we're happy to do the numbers. If someone has a particular type of building.
Great. And what percentage of your deployments are retrofit installation versus new construction?
That's a great question. It's almost 100% retrofit now. In other words, adding efficiency to the stuff you have. We do have joint co-development agreements with a couple of major OEMs. They're in our data room and so forth, and a white label agreement with a major OEM. But and so if you've got a technology like this, what do you want to do? You want to do two things, right? To get it out there, to have impact. You want to make the stuff that is in development better, but you also want to fix the stuff that's out there that isn't going anywhere soon.
Right. And the installed base right now is much larger than the growth market, and it's really expensive to replace HVAC equipment. So that's our first, but yes, you will see us licensing it to major OEMs, and that's how we will address the new market, the new installation market.
And you talk about the big CRE companies. What about some of the smaller players?
The big property management companies, you said? Right. Was that the question?
Yeah, well, it was really, are you focusing on some of the smaller players as well? I think we lost him, Raphael.
Oh, okay. Sure. Well, our go-to-market strategy is, our strategy is not to build an enormous sales force, but to focus our selling to people who are already selling to these. Yes, we have relationships with CBRE and Jones Lang LaSalle, among others, but it's also the energy service companies who are selling and reaching out to vast amounts of customers, and also through the utility incentive programs. That is really the most cost-effective way to reach out to a much larger market than we can if we were trying to build our own sales force. So that's not really, and to be honest with you, those customers already have every manufacturer in the world banging down on their door to sell them everything from nuts and bolts. So no, we're selling to the people who are already selling energy efficiency and energy demand reduction, those sort of things.
Great. And it seems like Europe might be a good launch market given their challenges with the cost of power. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, yes, if you mean by the utilities or
I'm not sure. I'm just asking the question that came in, so it
okay.
doesn't.
Well, yes, it is. And utilities are under incredible pressure to provide cost-effective energy efficiency solutions. And right now, they're burning up their budgets doing things like paying enormous amounts of money for people to install heat pumps. Well, we can save you the same energy and get you the same, actually much better results for about 1/6 of the cost. So consumers are complaining, and small businesses in particular are complaining and saying, price of energy is going up like crazy, and your energy efficiency solutions, and they're not very affordable. And we're talking about being able to deliver solutions to customers for a sixth of the cost and delivering paybacks of 1 to 36 months, and that's often before incentives. So in many places, you're going to get a payback of after incentives of, it could be very often it's cash flow positive from the first day.
And how does AI improve over time with additional installations? And do you see a data advantage emerging that would be difficult for competitors to replicate?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Huge. First of all, we have 36 billion data points as we speak, and our AI learns not only from across the data we get from every various model of which is typed in when we install a node from every various model, every type of equipment, but also the idiosyncrasies of the each individual HVAC unit, because you put it on one unit might have a completely different situation where it gets a lot of sun in the afternoon, or the thermostat's located in the wrong space, or it's an old unit and doesn't work so well. So it's going to need a slightly different approach. So our AI also enables us to customize the response and how it works for every single unit. It's not just for all of unit X or unit Y. No, it's for every unit, every type of situation. And of course,
And
that again helps us develop new products as well.
right. Can you elaborate on your IP and how it provides defensibility?
Sure, we have, as Tom will gladly espouse, we have a large portfolio of patents, over 20, globally. And as he says, keep your, license the places where you've got enemies, and license and keep a close eye on them, and license with places is going to work. And we have patents across the European Union, Latin America, India, China, etc.
And can you walk us through a typical customer engagement from initial assessment to installation to ongoing monitoring?
Sure. Well, that's easy. And one of the really nice things is it doesn't take very much information for us to do an installation and proposal, or for our customers to do it, because basically they need to find out what sort of equipment they have. And it doesn't even have to be the exact numbers. It just can say, okay, we have 10 rooftop units, we have a boiler, and we have a heating unit for the swimming pool, and we have a walk-in refrigeration unit. So we get an idea of the size of those units, which is very easy. It's right on a nameplate, and we don't even have to have the exact amount. And then we get a couple of utility bills, and from the utility bills, we will see right away how much they're spending and what the savings are going to be, based because you can calculate the hours very quickly, equipment runs. And the proposals put together by, let's say, our partner, an energy service company, and then they're the ones selling it, and they plan in the utility rebate incentives, which can be up to 100%, especially in the East Coast and in California, but also they exist in almost every state in the union and in Canada and in Europe, where they have incentive programs. And all the reporting is done in real time, so you can see from the first minute it's installed how much energy you're saving versus the baseline. And so the reporting is done instantaneously. It happens immediately, and that's why Munich Re is very happy to back our savings guarantee, and why utilities like it, because most utility programs offer incentives where they really cannot measure the effectiveness of what they're doing. We're like basically the first. And I've eventually think that utilities will switch to a model where they're going to pay for what you actually save, not for what they think you do. Because most people put in, for example, programmable thermostats, but never really program them or use them correctly. And so the energy is actually not saved.
Right. And what are the main obstacles to scaling nationally or internationally? And how do you plan to overcome them?
Well, to tell you that it is done through developing our relationships with the major um, commercial real estate companies and the utility programs. And this is something we're just rolling out now on a much larger scale. I mean, we have tens of thousands of installations, but we're looking at doing, hundreds of thousands and then millions. So um, the challenge is obviously for international markets is our partnering, because we're not planning to build a very large organization with operations in each country. It will be to partner with major companies, in the energy service space, and OEMs, and companies perhaps like Siemens, who we already have some agreements with, and Train, or other companies that do energy management internationally, and let them grow in the market in those countries. And in particular, to protect our intellectual property. Because, for example, if we, going into a country like China eventually, or India, partners like one of our partners already is Hitachi, and they can swing a much heavier hammer than we can in a market like India. So
Um,
that's our global, and locally
yeah,
it is pretty similar. Really work on developing our relationships with it. We've done a number of beta products, and now we have our capstone product, which will really enable people to do things they couldn't do before. And we're really excited about it, as are the utilities.
great. Center construction is forecast to increase significantly, potentially growing by as much as 20, almost 25%. Um, and they are currently using over 4% of the US electricity. Is PACE active in this space? And if so, how?
Sure. Well, we have already done some small data centers, usually as part of a corporate campus, but that's an enormous market for us. And that's why we're working very closely with AWS, because as you can imagine, AWS is one of the hyperscalers. I think the 25%, which you mentioned, is actually there's going to be a 25% increase in demand for electricity across the United States. A lot of that driven by data centers. And there is no way they can build power plants anywhere near close to that to meet that 25% growth by 2030. And not only that, and that's why you're starting to see a lot of political resistance to having data centers built. But the electrical grid, and we were talking about the problems of demand not being able to meet supply, or supply not being able to meet demand, is when we talked about the demand reduction solutions, which are going to be incredibly important, because you can build all the power plants you want, but the electrical grid can't handle them very quickly.
Thank you. Talk a little bit about the raise, what you're currently looking for in terms of dollars, and then how do you view the long-term exit strategy?
Sure. Well, our raise right now, we have done a first close, $1 million on the 10 million we're looking to raise, of which we have another 2 million circled now that we're working to close by the end of the year with a European investor. And this is through the New Jersey Economic Development Associate. So they will in fact match dollar for dollar any investment put in that goes either through the existing qualified venture fund, or if somebody wants to set up their own venture fund, and they're very open to doing that, and it doesn't take very long, less than 30 days, then they can actually get paid, make an investment in PACE, and get a matching investment from the state of New Jersey, which they then get to manage, and they get to collect their 20% and 2%, or 2 and 20, as they say, on the state of New Jersey's money, which is a really nice deal. So we still have room for 1, 2, 3 more in that program, and another additional 5 outside of that program. And then you
Great.
asked about what was the second question you asked?
Oh, an exit strategy.
Exit strategy. All right, our exit is pretty obvious. For me, it's to, we look at what Nest did, or Alarm.com, or Ring. So companies like, potentially Google, AWS, but also big companies like Schneider Electric, or potentially Siemens, but it's somebody who sells to all and has an interest in selling to controls and IT solutions to every manufacturer. And the other exit, as I mentioned, what Nest did for Google, $3.2 billion for a product which we absolutely blow away, is it's a nice benchmark.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to the audience for the questions. If anyone has additional questions or wants to be connected to Pace AI, please reach out to me. Everyone has my email address. In turn, they will have your information as well. Raphael, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any final words before we close out.
Well, sure. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending, and we're very happy to follow up with you. And here's one little note I've noticed, that I've sort of been in the clean technology and energy efficiency space for about the last 30 years. And you have to think of us sort of in the same view as LED lighting, what it did for lighting, except that, most lighting retrofits have already been done. But we are the most cost-effective way to reduce energy consumption and help fight global warming, and carbon growth, and reduce energy. We're the most cost-effective way. It is a tiny fraction of the cost of renewable energy, heat pumps, energy management systems. None of them come close in terms of how cost-effective they are, how much money you need to get in, how much money you're going to get out. And it's, of course, automatic, and then it doesn't involve human intervention to do it. There's a lot of solutions out there that require people to go and do stuff, and most places and buildings, they don't have any staff on hand. And so we try to do this autonomously and try to make it happen fast, solve the problem, and not tell people about the problem.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining. And I hope everyone has a great day.